So here is a picture of these military reconstruction zones. As you can see, they are made into districts: Military District 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Tennessee wasn't actually a district. They came immediately really back into the Union. They just signed up. They're like, yep, we'll do it, whatever it takes. All right. We're also going to see then the beginnings of the Reconstruction governments. So these are going to be run by Republicans, and they're going to have their base of power in freedmen's, carpetbaggers, and scalawags, since most white males of the South couldn't vote or hold office. So at this time, I'd like you to take out your handout that says African Americans in Reconstruction from the 14th Amendment to Jim Crow, and I want you to take a minute and just read the beginning, read on the first page through where through scalawags. So stop when it says after, stop right before it says after 1876, okay? So you should get a clearer idea then of what the basis of the power is going to be from these three groups. The carpetbaggers are going to be white Northerners who moved to the South after the war. Carpetbagger became a very derogatory word. The reality is most were middle class with good intentions who didn't come to victimize and take advantage of Southerners, actually wanted to help the South. Many were teachers and ministers or people who liked the weather, former Union soldiers, but they were hated because they had the right to vote. The next group, as you can see, are the scalawags. Sorry, I am going out of our order, so I started with carpetbaggers. Then we'll go to scalawags. These were considered the worst of the lot, according to Southerners. They were the ones who had not supported the war. They were the 2% of the Southerners who were pro-Union, but they too had the right to vote. It's going to be the carpetbaggers and the scalawags who form the basis of the Reconstruction governments in terms of office holders. And then the freedmen, of course, the former slaves who could now vote and hold office, they're the largest of the group. But however, due to the fact that most of them did not have an education or experience to be office holders, they're going to make up just the largest majority of voters. And just fun fact, a scalawag is also the name for a baby calf. So the next time you're on the farm and you see a baby calf, you can correctly refer to it as a scalawag. You're welcome. All right, so we're not done though with Johnson. Even though Congress has essentially taken over the power, Johnson's not out of the picture because he is still the commander-in-chief of the army, and he could appoint generals who were sympathetic to the South. And there were actually quite a few generals who were sympathetic to the South. They'd all gone to West Point together, and we're going to see that not everyone's going to get on board. But Edwin Stanton, who had been Lincoln Secretary of War, he was right now the Secretary of War. He also had served in Lincoln's cabinet. He was an ally to the radical Republicans. He was an interesting guy. He had a pretty quick temper, very short-fused, kind of actually like William Lloyd Garrison in some ways. But he'd been appointed by Lincoln in 1862 and honestly was one of the main reasons that the North had won the war. He was a great administrator. He was so disagreeable, though, that he even talked back to Abraham Lincoln. I know, can you believe it? Like, he's got a lot of nerve. Talked back to Abe? But he did. They were basically, like, sometimes they were like two angry pit bulls going at each other, just arguing over what the war strategy was going to be. But Johnson wanted generals who would be easy on the South, and he basically accused Stanton of wanting big meanies. And that's true. Stanton did want meanies. But he wanted meanies in order to allow for blacks to have some chance of getting some sort of civil rights. So what Congress did was they realized that Johnson wanted Edwin Stanton out. So they passed the Tenure of Office Act. basically what this says was that Stanton could not get fired by the president without the consent of the Senate. And at this point, they were feeling very pleased with themselves. They're like, we've done it. But they didn't do it. Johnson fired Stanton anyway. Stanton got so upset that he actually barricaded himself in his office and cooked his own meals for days until he was finally forced to come out. He was that angry that he had been fired. But the question was, did Andrew Johnson break the law? So just in terms of chronology again of how it went, Stanton had been serving under Lincoln. Lincoln dies. Johnson becomes president. Stanton stays on in the cabinet. He is the Secretary of War. Congress then passes the law saying that no one can get fired without the consent of the Senate. And then Johnson fires him anyway. So the thing is, the real million-dollar question was, well, was what Congress did, was that a constitutional law to begin with? So Johnson had, though, at this moment apparently broken the law, and then in early of 1868, the House of Representatives voted articles of impeachment against Andrew Johnson. And just as a reminder, you all know, impeachment, the laying of formal charges against the member of an executive or judicial branch, voted on by the House, doesn't mean you're guilty. What it means is you have to go up against the Senate for a trial. And if you are found guilty by the Senate, then you will be convicted and removed from office. And then, of course, you can still face civil charges. Just as a little reminder here, Nixon was not impeached. He resigned. Clinton was impeached for perjury, but he was not convicted.